Hey everybody, another day at BDF Farms. Today's kind of, I don't know if you call it PSA or like a heads up or a tip or whatnot. So I was out, still cold, still 5 degrees, and who knows what the wind chill is outside here in Indiana. I had mentioned in another video that I had bought a Gleaner F. It's new. I haven't harvested with it yet. The guys, everything runs and drives and everything. And there's a couple things in there that just electronically were not working. You know, the dome light wasn't working, the blower motor wasn't working, a couple of the lights were flashing. So with it being as cold as it was with the wind chill today, I jumped in the cab and started digging into the wiring. And it kind of, there's a couple pet peeves. One is these household wire nuts do not belong on anything with wheels. Huge pet peeve of mine. Now, I'm not blaming the previous owner. Probably didn't even know it was there and everything. The guy was a real nice guy, and you know, I don't think it was him. It was probably the owner before him. But it kind of led me on this wild goose chase, and you know, I got thinking, when I buy a piece of old farm equipment, one of the first things I do is I go through the wiring on it. And let me tell you why. I got a bunch of the old wiring here, and you find things like the wing nuts and everything else. So this Gleaner, most of it worked. There's a few things that didn't work, and I kind of just went down this little rabbit hole. But as I'm digging into it, I find an old wire, replacing old wiring. And you know, one of the things I did, and I had everything here to do it, was put a fuse box in. I hate having to look for fuse boxes, so I wired in a fuse panel. But look at this. That was going on the starter terminal directly to the battery, so there was nothing in there. To one splice, two splice, three splice, and there was a fourth splice to this I ended up cutting out. You know, numerous splices. Run one wire if you can. I know it's always going to be the case, but whenever you can, run one wire. Something else I found, I'm trying to find it over here in this mess of wiring. Pinched wiring. You know, there's another splice, there's another splice, there's another splice next to a terminal. But something I really caught my eye, and I'm trying to find the wire, was especially on the Gleaners. I mean, look at that fiasco. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish there. Something I had found on the Gleaners, you know, with them being galvanized steel, they're not really painted or anything. Bare wires. I found, and it was a couple of them that were going to the lights. And I'm trying to find which one went to which here. I had a pretty good example of a wire that had rubbed through, and I can't seem to find it now. But it had rubbed through and was touching the bare metal on the cab. And it was, like I said, I'm not blaming the previous owner. He probably didn't even know it was there. But you know, bare electrical wires touching any kind of metal is never good. Let me get my other bag here. I pulled 2 bags of stuff out of there, of all the tools and everything today. You know, but bare metal or galvanized metal touching bare wires is just asking for a short. And I said in a couple other videos, I mean, that switch has seen better days. You know, I'm a first responder. I'm a fireman. I'm not going to say where. You know, I found that little break right there in the fuse panel. I'm a fireman, and I'm not a big city fireman. We're a rural department. Kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're several townships into one. But I go I go to combine fires and whatnot, and farm equipment fires, and and I'm a firm believer in trying to protect your investment. And for the loss of a combine for a large scale farmer is detrimental. The loss of a combine for a small scale farmer, whether it be myself with my little plot or somebody with 30, 40 acres, that could be a huge game changer. So I guess you can kind of call this a little bit of a PSA. Go through your wiring when you get something used. Especially, like my Gleaner was built in the 70s. I'm not blaming the previous owner. I don't even think he knew some of the stuff was in there and it was in bad shape as it was. But guys, this stuff is so simple to work on. I spent 30, 40 bucks and a couple rocker switches. I got a fuse panel, relays and everything in there, and I think I got that on eBay. And so all my fuses were in one spot. Now it did take a little bit of drilling and cutting and rewiring and the terminals and everything that I had here. But now I know it's safe. Now I know that there's nothing in the cab that's going to short and catch fire. There's a few wires externally I got to rerun yet. I'm going to clean up the wires around the engine bay and everything. But man, that is one of the easiest things you could do. And a day like today, where it's 5-10 degrees outside, and the wind chill's out there. There it is, right there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Right there. See a little? Go focus, right there. That was one of my light wires going out of the cab and was rubbing against the body. So that bare wire was rubbing against the galvanized metal. If I would have energized those lights, I would have energized the whole combine. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The, sitting inside that cab was pretty bearable. I spent about 3 hours in there today. I got some thermals on, kind of heavy jacket, light wire strippers, a couple screwdrivers, and wire and wire loom and stuff. And I just started rewiring the cab of that combine. And I found 5 or 6 breaks and wires, bare wires, that wire nut, which drives me crazy. I cannot stand household wire nuts on anything with wheels. That is indoor behind drywall use kind of stuff, not for outdoor, not for farm equipment for sure, but not for anything that's going to get exposed to the elements. 4 hours, and I completely got inside of that cab rewired. There's a couple things I do want to add yet, and I do have the spots to do it, so I'm going to have to tear it back in there. I have a radio I'm going to install, and I want to install like a cigarette lighter and all that. But I'm getting off topic. Check your wiring. Do it right, do it nice. Get heat shrink connectors, get proper gauge wiring, get good loom, and just make sure your wiring is good. If you've know anything about farming, grain dust is highly explosive. The dust you blow off your combine or whatnot, that stuff is highly explosive. You can go online on YouTube, and there's several videos you can watch of grain dust explosions. That stuff will kill people. And the two things I see all the time on the combine fires I go to, or the tractor fires or whatnot, it's either failed electrical or lack of maintenance. John Deere, don't mean to name drop. We'll just say the green combines, green and yellow combines. There is a U joint underneath it's in the grain hopper, You have to remove an access panel to the grain hopper or remove part of the cab to get to the said U-joint. But it's never greased, and that U-joint fails and it creates heat. And that is why a lot of the green and yellow combines you see that are burnt up around the cab area because nobody takes the time to get in there. Either they don't know what's there, they don't read the manual. Nobody takes the time to open up those covers, get underneath the seat, and grease that U-joint. Electrical fires, something like that bare wire. That bare wire was, the guy has some spotlights on there. I don't know if it was him or the previous owner. Somebody had wired some spotlights on there in the grain tank, and there's kind of one going around the back and everything. It may have been done from the factory. I don't know. But they went between the cab and the grain tank in that little spot right there. And it looped around, and that broken wire was right there in that spot, right behind where the cab and the grain tank meet, and there was a little bit of foam there at one time. And that bare wire was touching the galvanized side of the combine. It wasn't touching the painted cab, touching the galvanized side of the combine. If I would energize those lights and sparked, or if I would have left the lights on for a little bit or whatnot, it very possible could have caught fire. Now, I did wash it and everything, so it's clean. It's not dirty or anything. There's not a lot of grain dust. It's middle of winter right now, so there's a couple feet of snow on the ground. But, that's a big purchase for me. That is my first combine that I have not had to borrow. That is the first combine I've ever owned. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to make sure everything's good on it. I'm going to make sure the wiring's good on it. I've had to rewire my little Oliver 55. I get a couple problems with that. Okay, yeah, I'll go find the short first and fix that. And second short, I'll go fix that. When I get to the third short or the third electrical problem, I rip everything out and I start from scratch. Because if I'm having more than one issue with it, something's going wrong. That's what I do with everything. So the 55 didn't really have any of the wiring redone since my dad and I overhauled it 25 years ago. It was a project him and I took on as a kid. So that has a fresh wiring harness in it. My 1950T, my Oliver, that still had original wiring from the factory, and there was so many things in there that didn't work, guys. I ended up doing the same thing. I ripped it all out, and I got new wire and new loom and heat shrink, and I completely rewired that whole tractor. Took me a whole day, but now I know it's not going to catch fire. I'm a sucker for fuse boxes. I put fuse boxes on everything I build. Super 55, okay, maybe not. It doesn't have a fuse box. It doesn't really need it. There's like one fuse on there. But the 1950s, it's got radios in there. It's got applicator stuff in there. It's got stuff for my sprayer. It's got radio in there. That got a fuse panel put in it. My Massey Harris, that thing I drug out of the weeds. I had to rewire that thing. Nothing worked on there. Built the loom, built the whole harness. It took me 5 hours to build the harness on there. I think there's a total of 9 wires. But that's another one. I put a fuse panel in it. There's a little fuse block in there. It holds 6 or 7 fuses, or 6 fuses. And now I know where it's at. It's easy to get to. Everything needs to have a fusible link, and everything needs to try to be one continuous wire with minimum breaks, and you need to protect it with loom. Another reason I rewired the Massey was I switched it from 6-volt positive ground to 12-volt negative ground. That's a whole nother story. I can show you guys that when it warms up. But but before you go driving the equipment around all day long in the fields and getting it all dirty, the grain dust and everything, go through electrical, make sure it's worth it. It's a big purchase for a lot of us, and it'd be a shame for you spend $4,000 on a combine and it doesn't even make it through the first field because it catches fire because of a light switch. So keep trucking along, keep going at it. I don't know what's going to be next. It's still cold. Christmas vacation's coming up. But I'm going to try to post something every week. If anybody got questions or anybody finds these videos, I know I don't really have too many views right now, which is fine. Somebody will find them eventually. Leave me a comment. What you'd like to see next. And we'll go from there. Hopefully somebody finds these. And I'm not doing this to be like this huge content creator, because no, I don't care. Just to strictly try to be educational, trying to help people in a similar situation I am, of little to no ground, trying to start farming. So yeah, if anybody finds these and they want to start asking questions, or if you have any ideas for things you'd like to see, leave a comment and we'll touch on it. Have a good one, stay safe, and don't give up.